Hello students. Yesterday we learnt about animal adaptations. Today we are going to discuss about plant adaptations. According to warming, based on availability of water, plants are divided into three groups. The first group it is called as hydrophytes, the second group it is called as mesophyte, and the third group it is called as xerophyte. Hydrophyte means these are the group of the plants which grow in water. That means they are aquatic in their habitat. That's why they are called as hydrophytes. And the next category is mesophyte. In the name itself, it is clearly mentioned mesophyte. Phyta means plant, whereas meso means moderate climatic condition. But here, the climatic condition we are considering it as availability of water. So the plants which grow in medium availability of water, that means the water availability is not very less or not even more. That means moderate availability of water in that particular habitat the plants they grow, then that plants are called as mesophytes. And the next group of the plant, and of course last group of the plant, is xerophyte. In the name itself it is clearly mentioned xeric means dry climatic conditions. Phyta means, as you all know, plants. So the plants which are growing in dry climatic conditions, that means there in such climatic conditions the availability of water is very less. In such less availability of water, if the plants are growing, then that group of plants are called as xerophytes. Here you need to understand one more point. Mesophytes, they are growing in moderate availability of water. That's why mesophytes usually they do not show any sort of modifications, and maximum of the plant modifications will be exhibited by hydrophytes and xerophytes. Very less adaptations will be exhibited by mesophytes. So let us take the first group of the plants, that is hydrophytes. Yes, these are hydrophytes. Here I pasted almost all the images, all the examples, so that you can understand very clearly. Hydrophytes, again, they are of five types. Here I clearly mentioned. First one, it is free floating hydrophytes, and the second one is suspended hydrophytes, and the next one is submerged rooted hydrophytes, and the next one is fixed floating hydrophytes, and the next one is emergent hydrophytes, which is also called as amphibious hydrophytes. And this last group is the largest group of hydrophytes. Out of all these five, the fifth one is the largest group of hydrophytes. Let us take one after one. The first one is free floating hydrophytes. In the name itself, it is very clearly mentioned. These are the hydrophytes which are freely floating on the water surface. That means they are not in contact with the soil. They freely float on the water surface. Then that free floating aquatic plants, they are called as free floating hydrophytes. And here we have taken several examples. The first example is Wolffia. You know, in the plant kingdom itself, we already discussed this point. It is the smallest angiosperm. Here, for your understanding, I gave this image also. You can see it. Hope you are understanding this by seeing it. So they are rootless. Here, did you see any roots? Nowhere you can't be able to see any root. So they are the rootless hydrophytes. And the next one is Pistia, which is very simply called as water cabbage, which has roots. See, if you want, you can see it as also. It is almost looking like a cabbage. Of course, it is looking like a green rose according to me, but here it is mentioned, so we are taking the name cabbage. Of course, it is also giving the appearance of cabbage, so it is simply called as water cabbage, but it is having roots. Whereas the next example is Eichhornia, whereas here this is the I'm sorry, the next example is Lemna. I'm really sorry, I made a mistake. The next example is Lemna, which is simply called as a duckweed. Here you can be able to see this is Lemna. Hope you can, this image is clear to you. This is a lemna, which consisting of unbranched roots. Whereas the next one is Eichhornia, and Eichhornia in our regular classes many times, at least 5 6 times, I clearly mentioned it is called as terror of Bengal because it led to the death of many cows. That's why it is called as a terror of Bengal, and it is also called as water hyacinth or aquatic weed, and is actually native of South America. Whereas here you can be able to see the image of this Eichhornia. And the next example what we have taken is Salvinia. Salvinia, it is also called as water fern. Here you can be able to see the image. So almost for every example I pasted one image here, so you can see this and you just go through the example, you can clearly understand. But still, if you have any doubts, you can WhatsApp me. And the next group, that means second group of hydrophytes, are suspended hydrophytes. Suspended means they are freely floating. They are freely floating in the water, and these are also freely floating, but on the water surface. Whereas these are also floating, but these are suspended. They're freely suspended in the water, and this is floating on the water surface. So these are the plants which remains under water and are not rooted. That means they are present in the water, but they don't have any roots. They are present on the water surface. They also not having roots. If the roots are present, they are not fixed in the soil. Hope you understand this. For this also we have taken some examples. The first example is Utricularia, which is simply called as bladderwort. Here, this yellow flowered plant is this is Utricularia. And it is rootless insectivorous plant, and students, you please remember this because this is an important point. Utricularia is also called as a rootless insectivorous plant, and this may be asked as a question. And the next one is Nasus, and here this is the image of Nasus. Whereas the next one is Hydrella. So here Hydrella, I need not to explain it more because every one of us knowing about this Hydrella. Many of us have seen this Hydrella plant. And the third group of hydrophytes is submerged and rooted hydrophytes. Submerged, that means they remain under water and their roots are fixed in the mud. That means you can't be able to see from the water surface. You can't be able to see. If you go into the water, then you can be able to see. For example, if you wanted to swim in the water, when you are entering into the water, after you enter into the water, then you can see these particular plants are present. But just you see from the water surface, you can't be able to notice these plants are present in the water. Then that type of water plants, they are called as submerged and rooted hydrophytes. That means here clearly you can see they remain under water. That means you can't be able to see them out, and they are rooted in the mud. And for this also we have taken some examples. The first one is Vallisneria. See here, this kind of ribbon type of leaves you can be able to see. So it is immersed in the water itself. Whereas the next example is Potamogeton. See, this is Potamogeton. Don't get confused. This is not Potamogeton. Only the inflorescence it is coming out, and the rest of the complete plant body it is present inside only. Because for the pollination they are making like this, but complete plant it is inside the surface of the water. Whereas the next one is Elodea. See, this is Elodea. Whereas the next group is fixed floating hydrophytes, and these have a fixed roots in the mud, but the leaves kept flowing on the water surface. Here the complete plant body it is present in the water, whereas here leaves are floating on the surface of the water. Rest of the complete plant body it is completely immersed in the water. Then that is called as fixed floating hydrophytes. And here also we have taken some example. The first example is Trapa. So this is Trapa. And the next one is Nymphia. See here, it is Nymphia. You must have seen these all the flowers you must have seen. And the next one is Victoria, which is simply called as water lily. See here, you can be able to see this image. So this is Victoria, which is simply called as water lily. And this very familiar water plant, that is Nelumbium, and this is a lotus. Whereas the last group of hydrophytes is emergent hydrophytes. That means in this plant, the roots are fixed in the soil, and the stem, it may be complete stem or it may be half of the stem. It is present. That means you can be able to clearly see the part or the complete stem out. Then that type of hydrophytes, it is called as immigrant hydrophytes, because only half a plant it is present in the water, whereas half plant you can be able to see on the water, above the water level. That's why it is called as amphibious hydrophytes. Hope you understand. Amphibious, that means amphi means both, being means organism which is present on land and also on in water, that is called as amphibian. Example is frog. Like that, in hydrophytes, this some part of the plant it is present in the water and some part of the plant it is present above the water level. That's why this is amphibious plant. An amphibious animal is frog. Whereas for this also we have taken few examples. The first one is Typha, and this is Typha. And students, yesterday's class, you remember it, I told this adaptations are very important for your practical. And this, here comes the question. Typha, it is important for your practical, and this Pistia, it is important for your practical, and Eichhornia, it is important for your practical, and Hydrilla, it's a very important topic for your practical. So adaptation is a topic you need to read for three things. The first one is NEET, the second one is your regular board exam, and of course it is also important for your practical. So please be very careful and try to understand every topic of this adaptation, and then you will get the good marks. And the next example is Sagittaria. So this is Sagittaria, and I didn't get any space here. That's why I did not paste remaining this examples, but you can check it in the textbook. Now, what are the adaptations in hydrophytes? Let us see. The first adaptation is osmotic pressure. Plants do not absorb unwanted water because they are having very less osmotic pressure in the cell, because they are already present in the water. That's why they don't absorb the unwanted water. Why? Because the osmotic pressure of the cell is less. And the next one is mucilase. If you touch any hydrophytic plant, you can feel it. It some sticky, a slimy coat. It is present on the surface of that particular plant, and that slimy coat that is present on the plant, that is called as mucilase. And this mucilase on the surface of the aquatic plants protect that particular plant from the bacteria and fungus. And the next adaptation is cuticle, and a very important one. This particular adaptation is very important. It helps in exchange of gases. So gaseous exchange, it takes place through general body surface, because try to understand little logically. Plant, it is present in the water. Most of the aquatic plants are present in the water. Then if a stomata is present, how it can be able to absorb the this air? That's why the gaseous exchange, it won't be possible. That is the reason why they are using general body surface only as their respiratory structure. So that's why this question is very important. So cuticle, it helps in gaseous exchange in hydrophytes. And the next one is parenchyma. While I'm explaining about plant tissue, we clearly read adaptations of parenchyma. Hope you remember. There I already explained parenchyma and chlorenchyma. Parenchyma means this is a parenchymous tissue where the intercellular spaces are filled up with air, so that the plant weight, it becomes very less, so the plant can be able to flow freely on the water surface, and that property, it is called as buoyancy, and that is due to the presence of parenchyma. Students, we already read it in this plant tissue. And the next one is chlorenchyma. Chlorenchyma means this is the type of parenchyma which is having chloroplastus. That means photosynthetic parenchyma. It is called as chlorenchyma, and very well developed. Chlorenchyma you can be able to see in hydrophytes. They actively participate in photosynthesis. And the next one is epidermis. And epidermis also bear chloroplast. See, this is a very peculiar character, you can see, because while I'm explaining about anatomy of flowering plants, I told epidermis is not having the chloroplast. But here in hydrophytes, it is an adaptation, it is a modification where you can be able to see chloroplast even in epidermis. This is a special type of character. Please notice it. And the next one is mechanical tissue, very less developed. I can say negligible amount of mechanical tissue. That's why all the hydrophytes are very very weak and tender. You can easily break it. So mechanical tissue is very less developed. See here, reduced sclerenchyma. Sclerenchyma is absent, or even if it present also, it is very reduced. That's why we can't expect much strength in hydrophytes. And the next one is conductive tissue. Conductive tissue, it includes xylem and phloem. Xylem, it helps in the transport of water, and phloem, it helps in the transport of food material, as every one of us know. But I am talking about hydrophytes. In hydrophytes, both of the tissue are very very less developed, whereas xylem of these plants is not differentiated completely. Even tracheids and vessels are also less developed, and phloem is also less developed. Why? Because the whole plant, it is preparing the food material. Here only I mentioned very clearly, here the epidermis, it is also having chloroplast. See the adaptation, see the modification that can be seen in the hydrophytes. Whole plant body, it is participating as a unit of photosynthesis. So why there is a additional need of developing a proper phloem in this? Because almost all the cells, they are participating actively in the food synthesis. So here there is no proper development of phloem, you can be able to see. And anyway they are present in the water, so xylem, it is very very less developed, and even tracheids and vessels are also less developed. Now, the next one, let us take the parts of the hydrophytes. The first one is roots. And root system of the hydrophytes, they may be absent. Example also we clearly mentioned here, Wolffia and Utricularia. You already have seen the images, but still for the clarity, here also I added that images. Here Wolffia, so this is the image. Here you can be able to see more clearly, I think so. Whereas Utricularia, here is a image. Only the flower, it is coming out, okay. Whereas reduced, that means roots either absent or reduced. Reduced means they are very very less developed. And here for that example is a trapa. See here, this is a trapa. Whereas the next one is Eichhornia. See, this is Eichhornia. See, very less development of this root system, you can be able to see. But here I need to mention very important point, very very important point, to be frank. That is, Eichhornia root caps are absent. Then what will be present in the place of root cap? You can be able to see this air filled root pockets, so that this plant can be able to float. They acquire a character of buoyancy. So this is one more additional character that can be seen in Eichhornia. Please remember this point, this is very important point. Instead of root caps, root pockets which are filled up with air can be seen in Eichhornia, so that the additional buoyancy can be obtained by this particular Eichhornia. Whereas the next one is leaves. Leaves may be astomatal or epistomatal. Astomatal, in the name itself you can be able to see astomatal means stomata are absent, whereas these type of astomatic leaves, they can be seen in submerged plants, because they are already completely immersed, they are completely present inside the water itself. If stomata are present also, there is no function can be performed by that particular stomata. That's why anyway there is no use, that's why no stomata also. That's why leaves are not having stomata, that's why a stomatic leaf. And the next one is epistomatic leaf. Epi means upon, whereas stomata means stomata. You all know this. Whereas epistomatic means if the stomata are present on the upper epidermal side of the leaf, then that is called as epistomatal leaf. Where this type of leaves can be seen, these type of leaves can be seen in floating plants, freely floating. That means the plants which are floating, their leaves are projected on the surface, floating on the surface of the water, like lotus. There you can be able to see this epistomatic. Now, the second group, as I already clearly mentioned, mesophytes we are not discussing. Why? Because they are having moderate availability of water. No, there is no extremities. That's why usually mesophytes do not show any sort of modifications. If present also, very very less number of modifications. That's why we are not taking the modification of mesophytes. So directly we started with hydrophytes. Directly I'm jumping into xerophytes. Here I'm missing mesophytes. Why? I already clearly mentioned. Now, xerophytes means the plants which are growing the deficiency of the water. That means here you can be able to observe one very important thing. Sir, I have seen many xerophytes, they are growing in the water availability is there, and they are growing in the water availability also. Then why you are telling xerophytes means they are growing in the deficiency of the water? Here I need to tell you one very important thing. Physiological dryness will be there. See, some xerophytes, they completely grow in deserts, that you know. Anyway, their water availability is very, very less. uh, Whereas physiological dryness means already that plant is adapted to this dry climatic conditions. That's why even if they are growing in the water available soil also, they got already designed to not utilize much amount of water, so they can't be able to utilize that particular water. Hope you understand. This is called as physiological dryness. That means because they are already adopted. For example, a person who habituated to eat more sweet, for example, if you give some other tasty item also, he usually enjoy the sweet only. So that's why here availability is there, but still they cannot be able to utilize because they are used to that particular habitat. Hope you understand. Physiological dryness means that means even water availability is there also, they can't be able to utilize because they are already adjusted to that xerophytic adaptations. Hope you understand this. Again, xerophytes are of three types. The first type is drought escapers, simply called as drought evaders or ephemerals. Whereas ephemerals means, you must have got some idea, these plants are short lived. See, the plants complete their life cycle only when sufficient moisture is available. That means their lifespan is very, very less. If the water availability is less, then they will die. That means I can say 6 to 8 months they will live, and after that they will die. I can say short-lived xerophytes, they are called as ephemerals, whereas they are not true xerophytes. They are showing only few. You may get a doubt. Obviously, you may get a doubt. They are not true xerophytes. Then why we are included this group under xerophytes? Means they are having some adaptations of this xerophytes. That's why we added. But they are not exhibiting all the properties of xerophytes. That's why they are not true xerophytes. Hope you understand now. Whereas they also show some adaptations. I'm sorry, they actually do not show any adaptations. Whereas one of the adaptation is spines are present on the surface which protect themselves from the grazing plants. And for this also I brought two examples. The first one is ergemon and the next one is Solanum xanthocarpum. So here the images I clearly mentioned, so clearly you can understand where the adaptations are very less. A maximum one or two adaptations you can be able to see. And the first adaptation is spines are present on the plant which protect themselves from the grazing plants. Now, the second group is drought resistant or drought avoiding or fleshy or succulent xerophytes. This group, these are the group of xerophytes which can be able to store the water. That means whenever the water is available, they immediately store the water, and the stored water only they try to utilize the complete year. Then that is called as drought resistant or succulent xerophytes. And they are also not true xerophytes. Students, I already told you xerophytic plants means the plants which grow in dry climatic conditions. But here they are deviating that particular rule. That's why these are also not the proper group of xerophytes. That's why they are also not true xerophytes, but they are perennial. They can live very long. Whereas here the first one is ephemerals. Their lifespan is very, very less. That means maximum 6 to 8 I can say. Whereas these are perennial. They live long. But they also show some adaptations. The first adaptation is mucilage. You cut any of this xerophyte. Here I mentioned so many. Here this is a group of xerophyte, and this group of xerophyte, it is Crassulaceae family, and this group of xerophyte is Cactaceae family, and of course some Euphorbiaceae family members are also comes under the example of succulent xerophytes. Now what you do now, you cut the part. Let us take this you cut here, you can be able to see leaking of some water because they already stored it now. That's why you can be able to see leaking of the water. That means uh, throughout the year kitna amount of water chahiye, utna amount of water they already store it in the plant. That's why they are called as a succulent xerophytes. That's why they are called as fleshy xerophytes. That's why they are called as drought resistant xerophytes. Hope you understand now. And that's why when we cut this particular stem, you can be able to see leaking of some moisture content. So it's a type of colloidal substance which has a great water holding capacity. And the next one is a scutoactive stomata. That means night active stomata. Whereas maximum of the stomata are photoactive stomata. That means the stomata which are active when the light is present, and the stomata which is active during night time, that is called as scutoactive stomata. And of course the third group of stomata is also there, that is hydroactive stomata. That means the stomata, if they're active only in the presence of water, if water is absent, immediately the stomata will be closed. Like that, there are three types of stomatas, but here you can be able to see scutoactive stomata because already less availability of water is there. So that amount of water also if they lost, obviously it may lead to the death. That's why to minimize the water loss, this stomata, it remains active during night and closes during daytime. Why? Because daytime the temperature is more, so they may lose more water in the name of transpiration, by the process called as transpiration. Now they have a special photosynthetic pathway called as a CAM pathway. Students, you please remember this. Now I can't be able to tell the details of this CAM pathway because it is a very big pathway, so I can't be able to explain it now. For now, just you remember the name CAM pathway. It is a type of photosynthetic pathway, and after finishing this ecology, I will explain the CAM pathway. That means I wanted to start photosynthesis. That's why I will finish this ecology topic in 5 more classes, and after 5 days we will start photosynthesis. In the photosynthesis, one of the photosynthetic pathways, CAM pathway, I'll explain you very detailedly there. But for now, you just remember the name. And these plants like Opuntia, their leaves are reduced to spines. See here, actually no, none of the plant, none of this group of the plants, they're having leaves. Then where are the leaves? See, these are the leaves. That means these spines, they're actually modified leaves. And the stem perform photosynthesis. See here, the stem only it became green, so this only perform the photosynthesis. And examples, all cactaceae members and all crassulaceae members and some members of Euphorbiaceae. And here these are cactaceae members and these are crassulaceae members and Euphorbiaceae members. Some are there. Next, the last group of xerophytes, that is drought endurers, which is also called as non-succulent xerophytes, and they are also called as psammophytes, and they are the true group of xerophytes. Students, till now we learned two groups of xerophytes, but both of the xerophytes are not true xerophytes. Now we started reading true group of xerophytes. They are nothing but non-succulent xerophytes, which are called as psammophytes or drought endurers. And of course they are perennial and they do not store water, and they are well adapted to drought conditions, and adaptations are very long and deep penetrated root, whereas less developed shoot system, if shoot system is more, obviously they may have more stomata, so they may lose more water. That's why the shoot system is less developed, so high root and less shoot ratio. And to reduce this transpiration, and leaves with very thick cuticle and they are waxy. See, this is very thick cuticle, you can be able to see. That's why they are very dark green, and this cuticle is very thick and waxy, and obviously with sunken stomata and hypostomatic. That means stomata, it is present towards the lower epidermis. And in some drought endurers, of course I brought example also, stipules are modified into spines. See here, these are spines. These are actually not actual thorns. These are the thorns which are modified by stipules. Stipules means I already told you in the morphology of flowering plants. to protect themselves from grazing animals. An example, acacia. See here, you can be able to see acacia plant. It is a very common plant. Every one of us have seen this plant. Whereas this plant, Calotropis, it is one of the best examples, the best examples for this non-succulent xerophytes. And everyone, almost every day we are seeing this Calotropis, most successful desert plant. And this also, uh, Caparis, and this Caparis leaves are absent. See here, no leaves, not at all. Here you can be able to see only the stem and this flowers only. So leaves are absent. And very important example is Nerium. See why I told this many times important, because Nerium is a typical xerophyte with maximum adaptations. None of the xerophyte it is having this many number of adaptations. So such a great example of non-succulent example is Nerium. And this is having multi-layered epidermis, and sclerenchyma type of hypodermis is present below the epidermis, and palisade tissue only present on both the surfaces, and thick and waxy cuticle. So these are the adaptations exhibited by Nerium. And everyone who are seeing this video must have seen these plants. Now, this slide, students, the above three types of xerophytes what I explained, I wanted to show in one slide so that you can compare the difference between one group to another group. That's why I made this slide. Just in one slide, all the groups of xerophytes I mentioned. So it will be very easy to read. Just press the pause button and go through it, and you can compare one group with another group, so you can read it very easily. Now, there are some special type of xerophytes based on the habitat. The first one is halophytes. Halophytes means these are the group of xerophytes which are growing in saline condition. Saline condition means, hope you know, high salty areas. And these type of soils are called as marshy soils. So halophytes means xerophytes which grow in high salty areas, which are simply called as marshy soils. Then they are called as halophytes. An example also I mentioned it here. Rhizophora is the best example. And epiphyte, that means the plant which is growing on another plant, then that is called as epiphyte. Epi means upon, phyta means plant. Epiphyta, upon another plant, then that is called as epiphyte. And here example also I brought, that is orchid. And psychrophyte means these are the plants or xerophytes which grow in extreme cold climatic condition, then that is called as psychrophytes. Whereas here also I brought the example rhododendron, that is example for this. And next one is chasmophyte. Chasmophytes means these are the xerophytes which grow in the crevices of this rocks. Crevices of rocks means you can be able to see the what you call margins, or you can be able to see the corners of the rocks, that is called as crevices of rocks. That means one rock, another rock. Between that you can be able to see the corners there where thoda mitti is there. Na? There you can be able to see this crevices of rocks. There you can be able to see this type of plants, that is called as chasmophytes. And for example, olive and also agave, these are the best examples. And next one is psammophytes. And these are the group of the plants which grow in the sand. And Prosopis is an example for this. And lithophytes, of course every one of us know lithophyte means these are the xerophytes which grow on the rocks. But did you notice one important thing here and here? That means chasmophytes also and lithophytes also, I gave the same examples, olive, agave. Here also did you notice olive and agave? Why two times these examples were repeated? Because crevices of rocks means they are also growing on rocks, but between two rocks they are growing, and on the rocks they are growing. So some of the agave plants and olives, obviously they can see on the they can be able to grow on rocks, and of course they can be able to grow in the corners of the rocks also. That's why these two groups of these two plants were repeated twice. Now, some special xerophytes. We have taken three examples for this. For that, first example is halophytes. Just now I mentioned halophytes means these are the plants which grow in salty areas. And here physiological dryness is seen. Physiological dryness means I clearly mentioned they adopted already for less water resistance, and again if water is available also, because they are already having adaptations, they becomes reluctant to use the water. That's the type of reluctance towards the water is called as physiological dryness. And adaptations are osmotic pressure. So the osmotic pressure of cell sap is very high. And the next one is Chagas glands. Chagas gland means these are lime secreting glands, and example is atriplex. So this is atriplex. You can be able to see lime, see white powdery substance you can be able to see na, that is nothing but lime which is produced by this Chagas glands. Now the third adaptation is mangrove vegetation. Mangrove vegetation, you already read it in the morphology of flowering plants. Respiratory roots, how many of you remember? I don't know, but there we already read it. That mangrove vegetation, here also we are repeating it. So these are the plants, group of the plants, special group of the plants which are growing in saline marshy areas. Whereas the adaptations are, they are showing nematophores. Nematophores means I already explained in the morphology of flowering plants. Respiratory roots. Usually roots are positively geotrophic, but the most important point here is they are negatively geotrophic. All the roots are positively geotrophic, whereas these are negatively geotrophic. See how they are standing erect. That means usually all the roots, they go deep into the soil, but they are standing straight. That means they are negatively geotrophic. Okay, and they helps in respiration. And viviparity, you must have confused. Viviparity is a character of animals. Why it is coming in the plants? No, in plants also, in some group of plants you can be able to see viviparity. Let us take animals first so that you can understand better. Viviparity in animals means the plants, they develop in the mother's womb itself up to some extent, then that is called as viviparity. Whereas here this is the seed. Usually I'm talking about usual cases. In usual cases the seed, it fall from the tree or plant, and then it goes somewhere and it develops into a new plant. Whereas in viviparous plants, when the seed, it is still attached to the plant, then only it starts germination. See how it got germinated. That means this is mother. Now this plant is mother, and when this mother, it is holding the seed, so from this only you can be able to see the emerging of this, what you call germination can be seen in this. That's why it is called as viviparity. Whereas the example is rhizophora. See here, this is a rhizophora, and in this rhizophora only I mentioned this nematophores and also viviparity. Hope you understand viviparity. If the germination takes place when the fruit or seed, it is attached to the plant body itself, then that is called as plant viviparity. Hope you understand. And remaining examples, you just go through it. Now, the second group is nothing but epiphytes. And epiphytes means these are the autotrophic plants which grow on other plant. Epiphyte, other plant. That means upon another plant. Then that is called as epiphyte and can be able to absorb atmospheric moisture. And students, you remember this also we already explained. And adaptations, if you go, heterorhizae. What is the meaning of heterorhizae? Heterorhizae means single plant but having two types of roots. Same plant, if it produces two types of roots, then that is called as heterorhizous. And here, what are the two types of roots? Let us see. The first one is clasping roots. So here, if you see this image, you can clearly understand. See, actually this is a tree. Actually this is a tree, but how this plant, it is strongly attached with this particular clasping roots. So clasping roots are the roots which are meant to hold that particular substratum. So the roots which are helpful in holding the substratum, they are called as clasping roots. And hanging roots means, see how they are hanging. So they are hanging. They consisting of a special tissue called as velamen tissue, which are hygroscopic in nature. Hygroscopy means ability of a tissue to absorb atmospheric moisture is called as hygroscopy. See here, they are not fixed to the soil. See, till the end you can see. For example, here it is not much clear, but here you can be able to see very clearly, because till the end you can be able to see it is nowhere attached to the soil. But how they absorb water? The absorption takes place due to these particular roots. They consisting of a special tissue called as velamen tissue. So this velamen tissue, it is having a nature called as hygroscopy. Hygroscopy means ability of a tissue to absorb atmospheric moisture. That is the reason why these hanging roots are also called as velamen roots, because these hanging roots, they consisting of velamen tissue. And of course, velamen tissue, it is present, and velamen tissue, it is hygroscopic in nature. That's why they are also called as hygroscopic roots. So hanging roots, velamen roots, or hygroscopic roots. Three names I gave. Okay, an example is the plants of Orchidaceae, that means orchids, and example I brought venda. And venda you can be able to clearly see. Here only I mentioned this venda. Okay, and this box may gave some information. Just I wanted to tell you where this type of plants you can be able to see. Just to go through it, just only for your understanding. No question comes out of this particular box. Now, the last type, that is nothing but psychrophytes. Psychrophytes are hexistodons. I already told you they grow in extreme cold climate, then that is called as psychrophytes, and they also show physiological dryness, and they are unable to absorb water due to the less temperature of the soil, and they show certain adaptations like small leaves and thick cuticle and very deep roots, and many examples I brought. See here, rhododendron, and also primula and anemone, like that. These are all for every example I pasted one image, so this will help you to read it more clearly. Students, with this I completed plant adaptations, and yesterday I completed animal adaptations. So with this we are finishing this topic adaptations, and tomorrow we will come up with next topic. Thank you so much.